And these are my dad's dog tags.
On days like this, Harvey Engelberg thinks a lot about sacrifice and how without a series of selfless acts in the face of harrowing danger, he would have never been born.
How do I repay a debt to somebody who gave our family life? And then this picture here.
His father, Cobby Engelberg, was a young boxing champion when he joined the Royal Canadian Air Force, a fearless fighter at age 24.
That was my dad right there.
Engelberg was a radio operator during Operation Tonga on one of dozens of RAF planes to leave England before midnight the night before D-Day. The mission to drop paratroopers behind enemy lines in German-occupied France to soften enemy defenses ahead of the full-scale invasion.
Not only did they go over enemy territory before their own troops were there, they had the furthest mission from base.
His plane, a Dakota, was captained by 26-year-old flying officer Harvey Edgar Jones. Jones had given tours of Niagara Falls and studied business at the University of Toronto before the war. His niece, Helen Peterson, remembers him well.
The biggest thing I always got a kick out of was the fact he was so tall he had to duck through the doorways.
As their aircraft carrying 26 men on board rumbled over the French coast into the dark and dangerous unknown, German flak suddenly tore through the night sky. The Dakota was hit and immediately in flames. Pilot Jones ordered everyone to abandon the aircraft, and most did. But Jones refused his parachute. According to multiple accounts, he saw Cobby Engelberg injured and unconscious behind him and decided to attempt a landing.
I can only imagine, must have looked down and seen him lying there and make a decision. What do I do? Do I jump and say goodbye to my buddy, or do what I have to?
The Dakota plummeted into the darkness below, crashing on a farm in the small town of Bassonville, France. Harvey Edgar Jones died instantly, but Cobby Engelberg somehow survived, despite severe injuries, including a fractured skull.
From what I understand, he was under the wing that was still on fire when they pulled him out of there. A lot of luck involved here.
His luck did not stop there. The farm's owners brought Engelberg into their home, offering medication and treating his wounds. They would take in others, only later sharing details of their selflessness in a letter to Engelberg.
The two heroes in this story, the pilot and the farmers who saved him.
Alice Duhamel and her son Arthur looked after the farm and the injured men. They cared for Engelberg and others until an Allied unit reached them, transporting the wounded to hospital. Their heroism saved lives, and they would pay dearly for it. Duhamel wrote in a letter that she and her son were imprisoned by the Nazis for helping the Allies. "My son was put to death by the SS," she wrote. "After 6 weeks, we succeeded to escape."
You read that, attacking it fall apart. That's crazy.
The Duhamels buried Harvey Edgar Jones on their farm, adorning his grave with flowers and a cross bearing the words, "Died for France, long live England." Years later, Cobby Engelberg named his son Harvey for the pilot who saved his life.
Listen, I got a name from somebody who saved my dad, so if he saved my dad, he saved me and my children and my grandchildren. So now we're 25 ancestors of Cobby Engelberg alone.
Engelberg says he'll be forever indebted to the heroes who made the ultimate sacrifice.
The fire was so violent that the bombs...
Harvey Engelberg feels his name bears responsibility.
Once I had my own kids, I started realizing the heavy debt that name gave me.
His father, Cobby Engelberg, an RCAF radio operator on a Dakota transport plane, survived the aircraft being shot down by the Germans on D-Day because pilot Harvey Edgar Jones stayed at the controls instead of parachuting out like the rest of the crew. Named after the pilot who saved his father, Harvey Engelberg feels it's his duty to honor his namesake.
I never met him, but to be named after somebody who died and you're supposed to honor his memory, I mean, that's a burden. It's a responsibility. How's that?
But in spite of his insatiable desire to show Jones's family gratitude, he never had luck tracking down his descendants, or the Duhamels, the French farmers who pulled his father from the plane's burning wreckage after the Dakota crashed on their land. Engelberg has letters his father exchanged with the Duhamels in later years.
I will be indebted to you forever. Je vous serai obligé à jamais. How do you thank someone for saving your life?
So imagine Harvey Engelberg's surprise when a handwritten letter arrived at his Montreal home in March from Bassonville, France.
She said, "I have pieces of your father's plane. Would you like them?" And then I immediately said, "Yeah, I'm coming to see you."
Thérèse Ferré and her husband now live on that farm. 78 years after that fateful night, the couple found pieces of Dakota KG-356 while working the land.
jamais entendu parler de cet avion dans le village. Je trouvais ça dégueulasse.
In April, Engelberg visited the green pasture where the plane went down.
It was very emotional, but it was just amazing to see these strangers, 6,000 miles away, caring as much as me.
He donated the shards of twisted metal to the Juno Beach Centre, Canada's war museum in Normandy, where they will soon be displayed.
I honestly couldn't find a better story for us to be telling in our museum.
It was.
Although Engelberg felt some peace, his work still felt unfinished. He hadn't been able to thank Harvey Edgar Jones's family.
I almost hit a wall. I was trying.
That's where we hoped we might be able to help. Surely his relatives had to be out there somewhere.
My goal in life was to find out more about him that I could, and one day to thank his family. And here we are.
His younger brother.
Helen Peterson is Harvey Jones's niece, the daughter of his older sister. She knew him as Uncle Harv.
He was my one and only uncle, my favorite uncle, you might say.
Finding out someone was named in his honor, she says, is a highlight of her life.
I'm just getting a little emotional with the whole thing and just thinking how wonderful it is.
Harvey Edgar Jones was first laid to rest in a well-maintained grave on the farm in France, but was reinterred at the Ranville War Cemetery in Normandy, alongside thousands of others who never made it home. He got a mention in dispatches for his heroism, but was never awarded a higher military honor like the Victoria Cross.
Probably the thing that stuck out to me the most is just that nobody knows, hardly anybody knows his story.
3 families on 2 continents forever connected by an act of bravery still felt through the generations. Hope this Canadian hero's story gets a second look. Dan Spector, Global News, Montreal.